when you look at the specific countries where they were picked from, you look at right now, these countries are between 40 to 90% Muslim. So he's saying on average, like close to half, or it could even be more than half of the slaves that were brought to the Americas were Muslims, but that's usually erased. Now, the last time when you were here in October,
Till almost stood up.
Those comments are so funny.
Yes, there was so many comments.
Oh,
and,
man.
And first of all, we are so happy to say that your videos, especially there was one particular video on why Black Americans prefer, West Africa over East Africa. It had the most. That's still the most viewed video on the OneMicShow page.
So where's my gift?
Yeah, but before we get on to that, there was one comment that came from
so funny.
there was one comment that came from Tiffany Anderson, and this I wanna come back to you because one other thing that a lot of people don't know about you, Brittany, is that you are a history major.
Yeah.
Was it just general history or Black history?
No, African diaspora and United States history.
Okay, all right. So there was a comment from Tiffany Anderson who said, I've observed several African curriculums and most, if not all, focus on the slave trade or Egypt. It's so deliberate. There's so much more that that could be taught. So I wanted you to talk about that a little bit, in as far as, maybe school curriculums or even college classes that people take. So
100% every class, and I am an African diaspora or a diaspora major. There has been an African diaspora in Australia, South America,
literally the
Canada,
whole world.
The whole world.
Yeah.
But
my coursework was focused solely on the Atlantic slave trade from West Africa to the United States and the Caribbean, barely even South America at all.
Okay.
So, and that is at a number one HBCU. So even the fact that there was like someone breaking down to me how because people make jokes in Kenya like Luos are the Nigerians of Kenyan tribes, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So someone breaking down the fact that the Bantu relationship and X, Y, and Z are things that were totally new to me. Mm-hmm. I did not learn about the East African slave trade, and this is as an African diaspora major at a Black school.
So East African slave trade is not even taught?
No.
Okay, so how did you get to learn about it? Did you just learn about it, separately, just outside class?
Outside of class.
Okay.
But for the most part, the Atlantic slave trade was the focus. So, and that's if you ask most African Americans, I feel like I did not even learn about, what's his name?
Mansa Musa?
No, I
Vasco
knew
da
Mansa
Gama?
Musa.
Lumumba?
Tanzania. He freed
Nyerere?
Tanzania. Did it? Yeah. Never learned about him in college.
But then Ali,
even in my African history class.
but Ali, if we trace back to history, I can understand why they never learned about Eastern Africa. Most of the East African slaves went to Europe because the Europeans were trading with the Arabs. Arabs are the ones
Middle East.
the Middle East and Europe, right? They were trading between those two.
But I think that's the problem with America.
And then even when the British decided they are holy enough to stop the slave trade and start hunting slave ships, it's when the Americas had started coming to
But I think to Brittany's point is that the course that she was learning was about the Africa diaspora.
Period. And we Americanized it.
And this is a university course.
Yeah.
So you would think
course for someone whose major is that. So that's my point. When you talk to Africans, they know European history, American history, a little bit of this. I feel like most African schools, or even just in general, do you know what I'm saying?
There's some version of it that's taught.
And that's a big problem with American schools is everything is super Americanized. So if my major is African diaspora, I should know a little bit about the Aboriginals in Australia. I never learned about that. I've had to do independent research. I should know a little bit about Uganda, Congo, those people who got sent to South America. That there's actually dark-skinned Black people in Colombia. These are things that I didn't really learn about because it was so American-centric.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting
if you say American diaspora, don't you mean, because what does the word
African
diaspora mean? African diaspora?
It's African diaspora.
diaspora.
Yeah, so there's this guy called Mustafa Briggs. All of you should Google this guy. This guy is talking about.
Let me put it in my phone now.
He's actually in the DMV. He's gonna be giving a lecture somewhere in Virginia. I think on Sunday. Okay. Mustafa Briggs, he talks about black history in Islam, because also Islam has been Arabized and Orientalized, and the black part of it has been erased. What a lot of people don't know is that, for example, and this he talks about the slaves who were brought to the United States. One thing, first of all, that's never mentioned is that it's assumed that these people just came from the jungle, that they never had anything going for them. So he was when you look at the specific countries where they were picked from, you look at right now, these countries are between 40 to 90% Muslim. So he's saying on average, close to half, or it could even be more than half of the slaves that were brought to the Americas were Muslims, but that's usually erased. Now, another thing that he also brings up is that when he talks about the history of Islam, how Islam came to Africa before it went to most parts of the Middle East. From Mecca, it came straight to Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is a country that's around 40% Muslim, but people never talk about Ethiopia as a Muslim country. No. So there's a lot of things he talks about. He talks about prophets who are black. I think he mentioned, was it Moses? There's a number of prophets, and he talks with proof. He doesn't talk, just giving, he's giving descriptions of people who are describing them at that particular point, the texture of their hair and everything. And he says, this is exactly how they looked. This guy, he has a very big body of work, very young guy. He's in his, I think he's in his mid-20s. He looks very young, but he has, a depth of knowledge that is just immeasurable. And I think also within schools in America, the way black history is taught, there's a lot of focus on the slavery part.
Slavery as the beginning of black history.
And then when they do world history, if you have a child, most school districts, they talk about world history. They never really talk about Africa. No,
the only thing that is taught, I taught world history, let's say Kingdom of Songhai, Egypt.
And that's it.
Yeah, honestly, a little Mansa Musa. Mau Mau was new for me until I went to Kenya. And then I started researching more of the independence. Kwame Nkrumah, maybe, if you have the time.
Even for the Mau Mau, it's just a tiny little bit of what
it's
really happened for the fight of independence in Kenya.